Good evening. Man, my face is red. How are you? How are you out there in um, internet world? Uh, I just want to check and make sure we're golden on the audio. It seems like it's working fine. Um, so we'll just get into it. Um, Today was a fascinating day for me. I had something scheduled for the live stream that was going to be fine, but I was able to, just out of pure quote unquote luck, um, I was able to find something to talk about today that was relevant to my own life. And I wanted to go through it with you online. And feel free to jump into the chat and let's talk about this. I don't know how it's set up. I don't know if you have to be a member to chat, but come and watch and let's talk about this. What will happen is that the title and the description and everything will be completely different, and we'll probably move what we were going to do tonight to tomorrow night, which is Tuesday night. Today is Monday. What I wanted to talk about tonight, and I don't know how the discussion is going to flow. I don't know how. I just don't know how it's going to, the timing and stuff like that. I plan on being live for about an hour tonight, unless I get a bunch of people on that want to talk about this stuff, because I think it's important, and I think it's definitely why I started the podcast. Actually, that's not why I started the podcast, because this is a live stream. So I apologize for that. I'm tired. Today I planted like 6 bushes in the backyard, and man, I'm hurting right now. So anyway, what I was going to say is that the discussion of ethics is big in my belief or my desire to have this channel. A couple different ways I wanted to look at this now. The way I mainly want to look at it like this is, I have my own business. Okay. I'm not beholden to anyone but the tech oligarchs in my speech at this point. And you could say, well, John, you could have people boycott your business and choose not to use you because of your beliefs or because of your expressed discussions on YouTube on your live stream. And to that I say, I've been in a bad spot before. I have lost business, and I've had no business, and it had nothing to do with my views. So should I lose any business because of my views or gain any business because of my views? I'm all for it. It can't be worse than zero, and I've gone with a zero before. And so one of the things that immediately came to mind with the discussion about ethics was, I know people in organizations that are actually tasked with being part of the ethics in the organization. In fact, I know an ethicist. I sold their house, but I'm not going to ask him about ethics. And you say, why? Well, there's 2 reasons, and I'm just going to go through them real quick. One, I don't have a educational framework from which to operate from, solely with the discussion of ethics, the research of ethics, the foundation of ethics, or anything like that. I that's not what my business degree has. I'm just not that way. I don't have that. And number 2, they work for companies that make ethical decisions on a daily basis, and I wouldn't want them to run into what is really a plague I feel like that's in our world today. And that's the idea that if they did come forward and speak about the business of ethics in corporations, they could find themselves without a job. And so that wouldn't be something that you'd want to do from your friends. That's not something you'd want to do for your friends. And so that's why I didn't reach out to them. I have friends that teach ethics courses, but no, I think we'll just go on our own path, and we'll go with the chat if chat comes up tonight, and we'll just go from there. Let me check one thing. I want to make sure something's working, and it is, and it's going to be funny because people are going to be surprised by how different the broadcast is tonight. Sorry. Okay. From what we're going to do. So we're going to get into it now. We're 6 minutes in. Let's just get started now. I thought the best thing to do would start with a discussion, would be to start with a discussion about ethics. And so if we got a definition of ethics, we will do that. And boy, look at that. Here we go. Okay, so you should be seeing what I'm putting up. And I'm just going to test. Okay, and I don't like this view. I'd rather go to this view. And so there we go. Now I'm going to toggle that back and forth every once in a while, but just deal with it. So here we go. Ethic. Definition of ethic: a set of moral principles, a theory or system of moral values. It's often used in plural, but singular or plural in construction. Ethics, B, is the principles of conduct governing an individual or a group. C is a consciousness of moral importance, and D is a guiding philosophy. And then it's plural. It's the discipline in dealing with what is good and bad, and with moral duty and obligation. A set of moral issues or aspects such as rightness. Now, I'm not going to do the ethics versus morals. I just want to see some of the synonyms, and I see that ethos is there. But ethics and morals are both used in the plural and often regarded as synonyms, but there's some distinction in how they're used. Moral often describes one's particular values concerning what is right and what is wrong, while ethics can refer broadly to moral principles. One often sees it applied to corrections of correct behavior within a relatively narrow area of activity. Our class had a debate over the ethics of genetic testing. Anybody, it seemed, could make the music. If they couldn't play guitar, they could push a button, and nobody worried about the ethics of appropriating riffs. In addition, morals usually connotes an element of subjective preference, while ethics tends to suggest aspects of universal fairness and the question of whether or not an action is responsible. And so that's fair. That's fair. So we will use ethics and morality or morals as the same tonight, even though we recognize that there are differences. Just want to check the chat, see if anybody's out there. Doesn't look like it yet. So here we go. Okay, so now that we know what ethics are, ethics, individually, what they are, how does that relate to business ethics? And so I pulled up what are business ethics. Now, this is a Google search. This is like 10 minutes. This isn't like the heaviest of the heavy. And so, take it for what it is. It says, by definition, business ethics are the moral principles that act as guidelines for the way a business handles or conducts itself in its transaction. In many ways, the same guidelines that individuals use to conduct themselves in an acceptable way in personal and professional settings apply to businesses as well. But to me, businesses have their own set of ethics. They are not the same as individual ethics. It says determining right and wrong. Acting unethically ultimately means determining what is right and what is wrong. Basic standards exist around the world that dictate what is wrong or unethical in terms of businesses, or in terms of business practices. For example, unsafe working conditions are generally considered unethical because they put workers in danger. An example of this is a crowded work floor with only one means of exit. In the event of an emergency such as a fire, workers could become trapped or might be trampled on as everybody heads for the only means of escape. While some unethical business practices are obvious or true for companies around the world, they do still occur. Determining what practices are ethical or not is more difficult to determine if they exist in a gray area where the lines between ethical and unethical can become blurred. For example, assume company A works with a contact at company B, an individual through which they negotiate all the prices for supplies they buy from company B. Company A naturally wants to get the best prices on the supplies. When the individual from company B comes to their home office to negotiate a new contract, they put him up in a top-tier hotel in the very best suite and make sure that all his wants and needs are met while he's there. In technical terms, this practice is not illegal. However, it might be considered a gray area close to, but not quite bribery, because the individual is then likely to be more inclined to give company A a price break at the expense of getting the best deal for his own company. I don't, I see what this says, and my argument would be this happens all the time, and not that it makes it right, but to me, that obviously it's not illegal, and obviously, if you can compete with someone by providing better services than someone else, so let's just say you're trying to sell your product to someone, and you put them in a high class hotel, and then I'm trying to figure out how it would work as in a sales job, like here, where the individual from company B comes to their home office to negotiate a new contract. They put him up in a top tier hotel in the very best suite and make sure all his needs and wants are met while he's there. But what if company A did that to all three of the vendors that they were considering? And so that's what I'm saying. It gets kind of like I'll talk about it in my own life now, because I don't want to forget it. When my father was running a business, a small business, he had come from massive organizations, some of the largest organizations in the world. And I'm not bragging about it. He was very displeased about his work for those organizations. But anyway, he ended up working as a fellow that was basically we fixed semi trailers, and that was the job. And the largest client that we had at the time had basically a salesperson that would go around, and his job was to talk to all the vendors, and we were one of the vendors, and move business in that direction. If it was he controlled everything. Okay, and previously my dad had bought this business, and previously the fellow that controlled everything would come to at the time Michigan, and he would be given free golf course usage, finest hotels, everything like that. Now, my dad posited that the business that he was bringing to the organization was not worth this behavior. My dad's thought was, why am I paying all this money to market to this man to give me business? Like, they should just know that we do a good job. They should just know that we are the best that they can have. Well, what happened? The business left. You see, that's how it works. It didn't matter that we had the best prices. It didn't matter that we had the best service. What mattered is that we catered to the salesman for the organization so that we could continue to do business with them. How much did it cost, like, for a golf course outing? $500, and the company was probably sending us what, $5,000 a week. So there's a difference between ethics and bad business. There's a difference between, or these things are actually always in conflict: a bad business, good business, etc. This example in my own business, there's what I would call reciprocity, and it's understood. And maybe people don't get it nowadays, but let's just say there's a couple ways that it works in real estate. My nose is itching. I'm sorry. Let's talk about the concept of reciprocity. So let's say, as a real estate agent, you ask me to sell your house. And so I sell your house, and you happen to be the owner of a car wash company. Okay. And I say to all of my friends and all my family and anybody that'll listen, hey man, I got my car washed at this place, and it was really, really nice. It was really, really good. Well, let's say that car wash guy buys another house and doesn't use you. Well, now we don't have reciprocity. Now I have no obligation to help that guy in any way. You use someone else. Maybe they were cheaper. Maybe they were more attractive, but you pick someone else, and therefore my reciprocity is not being held on to. So in that case, it's pretty much understood. Like, you work with the people. It'd be the same thing as if I was, say I was this is where I draw the line in my own business in ethics. Let's say I had 4 contractors. Let's just say I had 4 plumbers that really wanted my business. Now, plumbers don't want my business because they make so much money on their own. They don't need to go look for business on an hourly basis here in St. Louis, at least. So anyway, let's say 4 of them did, though. And of those 4, what I would do is I would say, look, you need to pay me, I don't know, maybe $500 a month to $1,000 a month. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to advertise my services using your money. And then how you will benefit is you will get the leads. If someone asks me who a great plumber is, I'm going to tell them that you're the great plumber. I don't find that ethical. And let me tell you how I work with vendors. I don't ask for anything. I don't want anything from the vendors at all, other than please treat my clients with respect. Please treat my clients right. And please give them a billing that is not, terrible, a competitive price. Well, please be responsible. Please be a good business, because to me, you are reflecting my business. Another spot where ethics comes into play in the real estate game is when you look at advertising. Specifically, there's advertisers here in St. Louis that say your home sold guaranteed. Well, what does that mean? It means out loud, it means, well, if the seller doesn't sell their house, the real estate company will come in and buy it for them, the real estate agent. But I've found that to be unethical, and I'll explain why. Let's assume that we've agreed to sell your home at a certain price that's the market price, in the sense that we've done our comparable sales, and when we think that it should go, let's just say we think it should sell for $200,000. And we've discussed this, okay? And so let's just say then you have this home sold guarantee. Now you automatically tell that person, look, we're going to sell this house for $200,000, but if we don't sell it, I'll buy it for $150,000. Okay? And let's just say that the house doesn't sell and you buy it for $150,000, put $10,000 in and sell it for $250,000. Were you being ethical, or who were you working for? Were you working for the best interest of the seller? What if you artificially come in and give the seller a low number and you never take it to the market? You say, you know what? I'm going to take this off your hands. You don't even have to go to the market. I'm going to buy this for $150,000. The client doesn't know if you're giving them the right number or not. You could probably get away with it. And so this is why I have difficulty in my own business now. Real estate is full of places where you can really run amok. You can really run afoul of ethics. And while we learn ethics in our continuing education classes, that doesn't mean that everyone's going to be ethical. And so I just wanted to put that out there. Now, it says understanding business ethics in 3 parts. I just want to make sure I was on the same page. Everything was good. And then if anybody was in chat or anything, nobody's in chat. So it says understanding so we already went over that, but it says 1, history. The first part is the history. While the idea of business ethics came into existence along with the creation of the first companies or organizations, what is most often referred to by the term as in its recent history since the early what is most often referred to by the term is its recent history since the early 1970s. This was when the term became commonly used in the United States. The main principle of business ethics are based in academia and on academic writings on proper business operations. Basic ethical practices have been gleaned through research and practical study of how the businesses function, how they operate both independently and with one another. And so let's just kind of dissect that a little differently. Let's say that I'm in business and I'm running a for-profit business, and now I'm doing well. Okay. Now I have someone in a university setting who's never owned a business and never run a business in their life, writing papers and doing research and telling me that I'm conducting my business in an unethical way. What do you think I'm going to do? Do you think I'm going to care about the academic who discusses this? I shouldn't. You say, well, they're an expert. They're an expert in ethics. Well, they're not an expert in business, and I need that. And that seems harsh, doesn't it? That seems harsh. I just wanted to go over it. I just wanted you to understand. Number 2, scandals are the second major meaning behind the term is derived from its close relationship and usage with when scandals occur. Companies selling goods into the U.S. that were created using child labor, which would be Nike, or poor working conditions, which would be Nike, is one such scandalous occurrence. I question Nike's ethics on a daily basis. Integration, perhaps the most recent and continually developing aspect of ethics is the third piece. The idea that companies are building business ethics into the core of their companies, making them a standard part of their operational blueprint. As the world continues to grow more political and more politically correct, an increased focus on proper business ethics and strong adherence to them become even more the norm. And so that's what I wanted to talk about most, but let's just finish this up. It says, summary: business ethics are important for every company. They keep workers safe, help trade and interact between companies, remain honest and fair, and generally make for better goods and services. Distinguishing what a company will and won't stand for is not always the same for each organization, but knowing basic ethical guidelines is a key component of company management. And I would say that that's not true. And number 3, in the integration, I disagree with that premise. I disagree with the premise. And you say, well, why would you disagree with that? See, it seems like a nice thing. Don't we want ethics in business? Oh, absolutely. But that was my phone. I'm sorry. What I have a problem with is what I'm seeing in my own life is when a business is supposed to be ethical, and they teach ethics all the time, spend hours and hours and hours in training, and yet they're handling a specific situation within their own organization unethically. They could lead to the medical injury or harm of one of their employees, and that to me is not ethical. And the problem that I have with ethics in business is this. It's my friend in ethics says, when you talk about ethics, they say, whose ethics, which I always think is funny, because that's right. It's of the perspective of those folks who are either in charge or maybe, are workers or, and the idea that you build an ethical culture is kind of funny. You can believe that you're a very ethical and honorable organization, and you could still be doing things that harm your employees to the point where it can't be ethical at all. I don't want to get into it any more than that, but let's just say it's a fascinating thing. Now that I've given you a definition of ethics, at least one that we can work with, both personally and in work, I thought I could explain something. I thought I could explain something in my own life as something that I found as an ethical dilemma, and what I ultimately did about it, and how it ultimately worked out. And so it's kind of reading, because I just wanted to write it out so that I didn't forget anything about it. But let me try I'll try to stop in the middle and just go from there from time to time, just so you're there and you know what I'm doing. Just again, I was just checking to see if anyone was in my stream, because if anybody does come into my stream with their name, I will say hello. Okay, so here we go. My former life as a real estate manager of a real estate investment company was, in my opinion, unethical. The core of the business was to find people who were down on their luck or stupid, tell them their property was worth half of what it was, and then get them to sell it to us. Afterwards, we would then sell the property to another investor, where they would likely lose their shirt because there was little room for profit. And we knew that going in. The business was rotten to the core. The owner was a smart man, but his ethics were gone. He would regularly stiff people that he owed money to, even though he had plenty of money. And he often looked for contractors who were on drugs or who were sick or ill and had to work in order to try not to lose what little they had. Often he looked for people he could hire that he could simply blackmail or shame them amongst others, as a way of like power over them. As an example, one of his maintenance men had been an alcoholic years prior. That came up in every conversation. So whenever you would say, "Hey, how's so and so?" and he'd say, "Oh, the alcoholic, he's doing fine." And if you ever came across talking to him, you'd say, "Hey, so and so is over working at this job site," and he would say, "Oh, that I just wanted you to know that he's an alcoholic. He's been an alcoholic, and he's not really with the program." Just very vicious and cruel cuts. Now, this was a well-respected member of the local business community. He had golf course memberships. His wife didn't work. Definitely affluent, but rotten to the core. And as soon as I realized how unethical this was, stealing property from grandparents on their deathbeds, I left. Now, did I feel bad about it? Well, I feel bad about having worked there, but at the time I was hired, I was told we were going to put together a commercial investment department, which I was very excited about. I'm not sure how long I was there. It wasn't long, and I don't miss it, but the experience was instructive. I needed to start my own real estate brokerage that looked out for its clients first so that they would never fall victim to unethical character. But now let's look at it from a different, more corporate perspective. And so one of the things we saw in that definition of a corporate ethics is this idea that a company can define its own ethics and teach their ethics. And when they do that, that their employees will be more ethical. I find that to be laughably not true, but let's continue down the path and see what we got here. So let me go to this here. Let me make sure that we see here. Okay, good. This is from Michigan State University. Now, they've had issues with ethics at Michigan State. Now, I think that college athletics is a space where there is a lot of non-ethical behavior on behalf of many, many people. So, for instance, the student athlete, that's a facade. That's how the NCAA uses their students to make a whole lot of money off of them and then not pay them. It's really bad. And there's other things. Let's go through this article, though. I think this, my problem is the one that I stated, and that is I have a company that believes that they're ethical, forcing unethical things on their employees. But there are other ways to look at ethics, and I thought maybe if we looked at it from different ways, perhaps we could come up with an answer. I guess what I'm saying is a new way to answer the problem, perhaps. So, as unpleasant as it might be to face, the statistics suggest that you're likely to encounter an ethical dilemma in the workplace. According to the Ethics Compliance Initiative's 2018 Global Benchmark on Workplace Ethics, 30% of employees in the U.S. personally observed misconduct in the past 12 months, a number close to the global median for misconduct observation. Recent headline-making ethical issues, particularly those tied to discrimination and sexual harassment, have brought unethical conduct in the working place to the forefront of the conversation. While greater awareness has led to a larger discussion on certain unethical behaviors, when you encounter ethical behavior in your own workplace, you're faced with an ethical dilemma of your own. What actions should you take? So this comes from the perspective of what do you do if you believe something that's going on in your organization is unethical? My own thought is I would leave immediately as soon as I could. And you say, well, John, what about your paycheck? What about your family? Don't they deserve? Maybe they don't share with you. They don't care about if the company is unethical. And now you're going to make them suffer because you're not going to have a paycheck. It goes into the whose ethics things. What if you do this? What if you become a quote unquote whistleblower behind a political shield, and you use that political shield as a whistleblower to impugn the president of the United States, where you feel that you are doing good when you're actually a pawn of the foreign establishment. What happens then? Were you being ethical? Well, If you knew that you were being used as a pawn, then no. But if you were too stupid to know, then I guess no, you're not being unethical because you really did believe the baloney that you're putting out there. And so to me, ethics is not just there's not an easy answer. And one of the biases we're going to run into here is we're going to get a story or we're going to get like something where it's just obvious. But what might happen to you may never have been written in a book before. May have never been on a web page. So it's not that always that obvious, but let's continue in the article. It says how to act and react in an ethical dilemma. Depending on the situation, you may be a victim of unethical behavior, such as discrimination, sexual harassment, or bullying in a toxic workplace culture. You may be the witness to your manager's or coworkers' unethical behavior, or you may be asked by a manager or a client to do something unethical. Your immediate reaction may be to blow the whistle on the behavior. However, whistleblowing may encourage retaliation, but inaction makes you complicit or continues to victimize you. It's an ethical dilemma. That's absolutely right. It's easy to say, go tell the parent in the room or go tell the adult, but what if they're in on it? Or what if they don't think that what is going on is unethical? In their stated ethics, it's not unethical what they're doing. I mean, you have a real problem there. This is an underlying problem with employment. And these are the types of things that I want to talk about on the live stream, because what do we do in these situations? Who are we looking out for? Are we always looking out for number one? If we always look out for number one, perhaps that's harmful for the organization. Perhaps that's harmful to our own relationships. It's just very, very difficult to go through this. But anyway, here's some steps that you can take to highlight your concerns without risking your job or your own ethics. So, let's see. It says, repeat back and clarify. It says, Muse career coach Avery Blank says to tell your manager what you think the request is to ensure you have the complete clarity. This may resolve the issue either because you've misunderstood or because the newfound perspective has made the person rethink their request. Okay, so let's just go over one. I don't know. Boy, there's been some unethical things happen in the United States, in the world this past couple of weeks. I don't want to get into those, but and where do you have this problem with the line of, is it unethical or is it criminal? But let's just go over this, repeat back and clarify. So let's just say I'm at a factory and the foreman comes to me and says, I need you to take this hazardous material and I need you to dump it in the sewer. So what I should do when I know that that's not the right thing to do, I should repeat that. I say, let me make sure I'm understanding you clearly here. You want me to dump this toxic material down the sewer. And then that gives them the opportunity to respond. One of the things I wanted to kind of in the same vein is when I was in Detroit, Michigan working, we worked in front of a slaughterhouse that was in downtown Detroit. And the owners of the slaughterhouse used the Detroit sewer system because it was cheaper than if they went anywhere else. It's fascinating because it's like all the blood and all the nasties went into the sewer, and they weren't charged nearly what they would be charged if they worked in the surrounding counties and things of that nature. Was it ethical then? I don't know. One of the things that's a principle in economics is, and I'm going to butcher it because I'm tired, and we'll go with unintended consequences or like a zero gain proposition. Let's go over it real quick. So back in the day, companies like General Electric would have harmful chemicals, and they would in the Hudson River, and they would just pour all these chemicals in the Hudson River, and it killed the fishes, and it killed the trees, and it killed everything. But they never said that they did that. They never acknowledged it for years and years and years and years, because they didn't feel that what they were doing mattered if it hurt the environment, because the environment wasn't their top priority. Their top priority was making money. And so in that way, even now we talk about like life cycle products. And the idea of the life cycle product is you get these raw materials, you produce the product, and then there's a way to dispose of the product that doesn't hurt the planet. Negative externality is what that concept was in economics. So, in my opinion, really, really innovative companies have always kind of propped up that would take care of the negative externality, and it sometimes exploit the fact that there was one, because they were the only players in the marketplace that could do anything about it. In one instance, I'm thinking specifically of, believe it or not, I don't know the name of the company, but Bill Gates is behind it, and it's a nuclear company. Now, you can't really trust Bill Gates for much, but it's a nuclear company that, if it works right, they make these small reactors that can burn the used nuclear material and waste from previous reactors. And in doing so, now we have less nuclear waste. Now, I don't know if it's true, but I think I mentioned they're making a business out of the leftovers of a chemical reaction. It's the same thing, really. I mean, an aluminum can is, if you've ever looked at YouTube, I mean, it's an amazing design. It's amazing in every way. And the thing that's cool about the can is you literally can go and recycle it, and you can get paid to recycle this can. I think it's cool. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. But anyway, next, let's work on some more things. It says, ask an ethical question. If simply stating the request aloud does not work, probing your supervisor with questions regarding the reason and motivation behind the request can also help deter them. Melody Wilding, another Muse career coach, says that not only does this demonstrate that you make measured, informed decisions, but it can also create more transparent dialogue. In this way, you're kind of like, something's wrong, and so you're trying to actively keep from having to do it. Again, if you're smart enough to pick up that you're doing something wrong, that's wonderful. But if you're dumber than a box of rocks, this doesn't go well. Then the next one, it says, focus on your manager's best interests. If you can't convince your supervisor yet, it may be time to point out that this will look bad if it gets out. Pointing out the disadvantage this unethical action will have on your manager's career will help your hands stay clean and portray your loyalty. So that's one thing that I tell the kids. I was like, don't do anything that would look bad in a newspaper. And they say, well, what's a newspaper? It says, suggest an alternative solution. After telling your manager that you are, in fact, uncomfortable with the situation, after getting more information, provide an alternative solution as the next step to do if possible. Fisher says, that's Ann Fisher says that while this isn't always possible, it's worth a shot and you could end up looking like a hero. I don't think you want to end up looking like a hero. I think you just want to avoid doing something unethical. Escalate situations. It says if the situation isn't resolved by clarifying, you'll need to determine that the next person to inform. Depending on your organization, this may be your boss's leadership, general counsel, a compliance officer, a hotline, an auditor, or an HR representative. So you're supposed to go up the chain. Blow the whistle. If you exhaust all internal options and the issue isn't resolved, external entities like the government or the media are the next step. But Daniel Victor in the New York Times advises to consider the risk before you escalate the issue to this level. Bringing unethical behavior to light, even internally, isn't always popular. Depending on the situation and the type of unethical behavior you're bringing to light, you may be protected by OSHA's whistleblower protection program. However, even if you may be legally protected and vindicated, understand what this action could mean in your personal and professional life. And that's just it. How much are your ethics worth? Are your ethics worth losing your job? Are your ethics worth harassment? Are your ethics worth countersuits? Maybe it's you that have a problem and not the organization. And I'm not proud of that. I'm just saying. It says, leave unethical in environments if necessary. If all else fails, it may be time to find another job. Try one final firm refusal with the ultimatum that you will leave. And if doing so, if the action isn't resolved, while this may put an economic burden on you, in the long run, you don't want to stay in a position where you're asked to violate your morals or where advancement requires unethical behavior. What do you think? Is that true? I mean, it's very tough if you're the breadwinner of a family to tell your family that you have been fired or that you have walked from the company because of an unethical thing. Because we all have different value systems, and some people flat out reject the idea of quitting a job for any reason, as long as they're paying you and you're doing okay there. It doesn't matter what you're doing unethically. That's not why you're there. You're there to make money by trading your time or your expertise for capital, for cash. It says do's and don'ts for speaking up to bad behavior. If you're faced with an ethical dilemma, emotion can quickly take over, as these situations may feel alarming or like a moral test. Use these do's and don'ts based on insights from Army Gallo of the Harvard Business Review, author of the HBR Guide to Dealing with Conflict at Work, to make a more deliberate decision. 2, question your assumptions. Fear or confrontation or retaliation can spur rationalization. Common rationalizations may include statements like, this isn't a big deal, or this is just the way it's done, or this is not my responsibility. Examine those assumptions to ensure they aren't simply a way to avoid feeling bad if you don't take action. That's rationalizing. I understand rationalizing. I mean, it's really tough to go against your employer. Gain perspective. Try to understand what is motivating the unethical request or action. Most of the time it's profits. Most of the time it's company profits. Or an ego, or like somebody, it's a power struggle and they want to be able to tell you what to do. And the fact that it's illegal and you will still do it, they feel quite a sense of power on that. And then, like I said, the business perspective is just, look, we're trying to make money. If we can short a couple dollars by dumping some chemicals on the river, we're doing it. So I disagree. So it says, gain perspective, try to understand what is motivating the unethical request or action. This perspective can help form a response, particularly if there's an ethical way to achieve the same goal. So let's say your boss says, hey, John, go take that bottle over there, that 55-gallon jug, and I want you to go and I want you to throw it. It's got radioactive chemicals. So make sure you wear a suit. But I'd like you to throw it. I'd like you to dig up the sidewalk and put the 55-gallon drum there. And I know you might think like, hey, it might kill some people, but that won't be for a number of years, so don't worry about it. Even worse would be like, go put this in the bad part of town, because now you're taking advantage of people that can't help themselves, which is worse than just doing it. So anyway, then the way this is written is you're supposed to come up with an alternative that works. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. The next one is have a conversation. With the exception of extreme ethics violations, confronting the individual directly first is often the best way to manage a situation. Provide an opportunity for the person to explain his actions or to correct the behavior first. If a direct communication doesn't resolve the issue, you may need to inform your manager, HR department, or a company ethics hotline. I mean, look, let's just say there's a factory and your boss works on the factory line and you work on the factory line. There's time to sit down for a meeting. It's tough. It says don't forge ahead without a plan. Spend some time rehearsing how you're going to address the situation to test your thought process and have a planned approach. And then don't make accusations, which is kind of interesting. It says keep the focus on understanding the situation, leading with questions like, can you help me understand, or can you help me see, can establish if the individual is open to a productive discussion and may help them see your perspective. In our second article, we talked about how academia, I don't know which way you would go with that, has said that they have defined the rules for ethics after careful study. When you read things like this, keep the focus on understanding the situation, leading with questions like, can you help me understand, or can you help me see? If you do that, if you pull that with your employer when they're committing an unethical act that's possibly illegal, they will keep that in the back of their mind, and the next opportunity they have to replace you, they will probably do that. Know what is ethical. There are ethical aspects to every individual and organizational decision. Unfortunately, when an organization's leadership makes unethical decisions or even asks employees to conduct business in an unethical manner, this can permeate the company culture and the ethical decision-making process of the entire organization. You tell me, do you think Disney is an ethical corporation? Do you think Nike's an ethical corporation? Do you think Walmart's an ethical corporation? Do you think Amazon's an ethical corporation? Do you think Boeing's an ethical corporation? Do you think anyone that works in the government is ethical? Even the ethics office is unethical. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and coming from universities that are also unethical, it's very odd to me. It's kind of Orwellian. It's kind of Orwellian. These people are telling you how to be ethical and live an ethical life when they themselves are not ethical. It's kind of crazy. There are ethical aspects to every individual and organizational decision. Unfortunately, when an organization's leadership makes unethical decisions or even asks employees conduct business in an unethical manner, this can permeate the company culture and the ethical decision-making process of the entire organization. And again, we're going back over this, but look, if you teach ethics to your employees, it doesn't mean that you're an ethical company. It just means you taught them ethics. Maintaining your own ethical awareness and practicing sound judgment are essential as you decide what steps to take in dealing with ethical dilemmas. Not only can this help you to make better informed decisions that align with your values, this may also help you to be an ethical example for your coworkers and superiors that can lead to a more effective and ethical organization. What happens if you have 5 different religions at your work? I say that, and I don't mean that as a negative thing, but with my religion, with Christianity, there is a high level of ethics involved. It's our framework. And I suspect, although I cannot prove, I suspect this is a liability for me in some cases because I will approach you in the manner which I feel is most ethical. That's my basis from which I'm coming from. But they're my ethics. And yours may be completely different. And I have no idea about that. And so there's a good chance I'm putting myself out there to be taken advantage of, even when I'm following a good set of ethics. I just wanted to put that out there. Now, let's keep going. Let me just get the notes here. So this was an older article on ethics in the workforce, and I thought I could share it with you. I thought you might find it interesting. It says from 2016, it was the Stone Age. It says how to develop a process to manage ethical dilemmas. It says, yesterday I blogged on my ethicsage.com website about the role of management in establishing an ethical culture. The culture of an organization evolves from the values and ethical standards that should guide all actions and decisions. Today's blog addresses how to deal with ethical dilemmas in the workplace. Ethical conflicts that remain unresolved can lead to frustration for employees, managers, and external stakeholders. Stakeholder interests. Ethical conflicts arise when stakeholder interests differ. For example, a company may choose to maximize production and pay little attention to the quality of the end product. While the customers expect the product to meet their specifications, customers trust the organization to get it right the first time. An ethical conflict occurs when the interests of 2 employees are at odds. For example, 2 employees are up for one promotion and one takes credit for the work of the other. The decision maker needs to find a way to figure out who deserves credit for the work and make the decision accordingly. Conflict resolution process. Ethical conflicts do not always deal with right versus wrong issues. Absolutely. Dealing with such conflicts requires balancing the interests of all parties involved, as I previously blogged about. Imagine that the 2 employees have an equal claim to a promotion to a supervisor based on past performance. Each has a right to it, but only one can be chosen. In this case, the supervisor manager needs to follow a prescribed process to resolve the dilemma by incorporating an ethical dimension to the decision. Here are the 6 questions to ask. Which one is likely to set goals that conform to management's objectives? Which one can best work with stakeholders, customers, suppliers, and so on? Which one is more likely to be viewed as an effective leader by the work group? Which one is more respected by the work group and more likely to be followed? Which one is more likely to establish an ethical tone at the top? Which one has greater leadership potential? Do you notice that it's not one question is how does this person do in their current job, or how will they do in their next job? What will they be doing? The best approach to resolve an ethical conflict in the workplace is to prevent it from happening in the first place. I agree with that. This means to have a defined core set of values, ethical standards, strong compliance function, and ethical leadership. When conflicts do occur, a defined process helps to resolve it in an effective manner. Here are my thoughts about how to best resolve ethical conflicts. Now, we looked at that in the other article. Let's see if there's anything different here. It says clearly define the problem. It says ethical issues occur when stakeholder interests conflict. I agree with that. Ethical issues exist when a proposed action may be legal but doesn't conform to the ethical standards of the organization. I believe that. I believe that's true too. It says identify and evaluate alternative courses of action. So do you see how these are the italics are what you're supposed to do, and then the bullet points are the kind of rounding it out. It says identify and evaluate alternative courses of action. Consider how each alternative affects the stakeholders. Use ethical reasoning to resolve the dilemma. Evaluate the rights of each party and your obligations to them. Treat each party fairly in resolving the dilemma, and weigh the costs and benefits of alternatives. It says seek help if necessary to resolve the dilemma. What is the role of your supervisor in this matter? Are they an enabler of the conflict or a potential supporter? Who can you go to for guidance and support, like the board of directors? And that seems like a really weird place to go. If the supervisor is the one creating the conflict, then the employee must consider whether to jump the chain of command. I will address employee concerns in my next blog, but think about this. I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but jumping the chain of command is not ethical under some circumstances. Not ethical. It says decide on a course of action. Would others in the organization respect me in my decision? No, they never will. They're out for themselves. Well, how would my decision make me feel about myself? It'd make you feel terrible if you were punished because you made an ethical complaint against someone and it didn't result in any change other than you losing your job. Would I be proud of my decision? Would others be proud, i.e. my family? Well, pride goeth before the fall. Would I be able to defend my action if it became public knowledge, i.e. published in a newspaper? Yeah, sure. Sometimes you get lionized in the newspaper if you do something ethical. Other times, not so good. A common mistake is to assume that if an action is legal, it is therefore ethical. And I would say a twist to that is this. A common mistake is to assume that if an action is ethical, it is therefore legal. This is what's known as ethical legalism. A decision to withhold potential product defects from a customer may not break the law, but is dishonest. It's not an overt lie, but the decision fails to disclose all the information a customer has a right and need to know. Truthfulness is a double-edged sword, and many organizations fail on the transparency end. So in this case, they're talking, let's just use an example. Let's say an automotive manufacturer rushed a car to the market because it was to capture a trend, and we don't know how long the trend was going to last. Let's get it out there. And then let's say that the product itself is terrible. It is the definition of a lemon. What should the company do ethically? Well, the company should do a recall, a voluntary recall. Will they do that? Not until they're forced. Most companies will take brand attacks on their brand over admitting that they'd made a crappy product. It's very strange. So that's that article. I thought that was interesting. And so then we have another article, which I also think is interesting, which is why I put it out there. But I thought it was interesting because it's of this assumption that you're always, as an employee, stuck in a situation where you're in conflict with your employment, your tasks of what you do during the day. But what if the ethics of the organization were causing you to put yourself in a situation where it's life or death, literally life or death, a medical decision. Then what? You kind of have to keep going. So what is a conflict of interest? A conflict of interest at work arises when a situation that benefits an employee also affects your company. And employees are bound through your company's code of conduct to act in the interest of their employer and not for their own personal gain. It's best for employees not to enter a situation where their actions might create a conflict, whether it's actual, potential, or perceived, without disclosing the information. So what are some examples of situations your employees might find themselves in? I thought this was kind of fun. Again, it's on topic, but it's a little bit off topic. It's not something that that's necessarily what I'm talking about. But it says, hiring an unqualified relative to provide service to your company needs. So would you say that if you hired a qualified relative, that's okay? Number 2, starting a company that provides services similar to your full-time employer. How many companies are started that way? Number 3, failing to disclose that you're related to a job candidate the company is considering hiring. I think that is, I think it is ethical to do that. Making arrangements to work for a vendor or client at a future date while continuing to do business with them. Let me read that again. Making arrangements to work for a vendor or client at a future date while continuing to do business with them. So I suspect it's something like this. Let's say I'm an auto repair person, and they say, hey, do you want a job? And you say yes. Okay, well, you can work for me like in 2 weeks. That would be a conflict of interest at work. So what should you do? You should resign your position if you are going to get a position somewhere else. And the nice thing to do would be tell your employer like why you're leaving. Like, hey, I got a better job with so-and-so. Anyway, posting to social media about your company's weaknesses. I suspect that maybe 50 to 75% of the people that work in organizations have no idea how the company that they work for even makes money, what their role in it is, and so they'd have a very difficult time of ever posting something like that. Number 6, offering paid services on your time off to a company customer or supplier. Oh, that's weird. Working part-time at a company that sells a competing product or service as your full-time employer. That's weird. Accepting payment from another company for information about your employer. That's funny. The Chinese government does that all the time. And just check the lawsuits that are against academics for that. Failing to investigate a subordinate or coworker's wrongdoing because they are a friend. Boy, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And then, are you qualified to run an investigation? You know, like you're an IT, or you and your employee, I don't know, stole from the break room or farted in the break room and it smells really bad. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? You mean you just don't tell them? It's very hard to know the line of like, when do you confront somebody, or when do you leave something go? What if you investigate the person, but you don't ever tell them? Is that ethical? Sharing confidential information about your employer with a competitor. I can't imagine people doing that. But again, if you look at China, then you'd find dating or having a romantic relationship with a supervisor or subordinate. I would stretch that out even further. I would stretch that out 2 different ways. One, I would say if you're dating or having a romantic relationship with anyone in an organization that you're currently employed, it doesn't matter if they're a supervisor or subordinate. Number 12, making a purchase or business choice to boost a business that you have a stake in. I think that's hilarious. I think that's hilarious because that's hard. It's hard to get in that opportunity. Accepting a favor or gift from a client above the amount specified as acceptable by the company. Don't care about that one. Give whatever gifts you want to. I don't think that there's an ethical issue there. Owning a part of a business that sells goods or services to your employer. I don't think that's unethical as long as you disclose it. Number 15, reporting to a supervisor who is also a close friend or family member. I don't know that that's unethical. I mean, they work with you and everyone knows it because that's how you got hired. Doing business or work for a competitor, I don't think that's bad. It's bad if you're on the same payroll. That's not right. But, if you like say you're a healthcare worker, you're a nurse, okay, and one hospital fires you and the other hospital doesn't. You have to have the right to work. Accepting consulting fees and providing advice to another company for personal gain. I don't know what that even is about. Sharing information in an interview about your employer's activities or plans. I don't understand that one. Taking advantage of confidential information learned on the job for your own benefit. They do that all the time, especially in universities. Cashing in on a business opportunity that your company might have pursued. Hard to do, but you should always be looking for opportunity, in my opinion. I'm sorry. So anyway, that was that article. We have one other article. I don't know if we're going to go over it. I don't know if it's next on the list. Let me see. It says, what do you do when your boss is unethical? I thought that was an interesting question. So let's look at the article. It says, when I was conducting my research that led to burnout during organizational change, I asked my participants to identify what they believe led to their burnout. I didn't offer any potential choices relating to what I thought caused burnout. So one particular finding left me well flabbergasted. A disturbing 57% of my participants believe that their burnout was either caused or exacerbated by their manager's request for them to take illegal or unethical actions. Now, I wonder if this matters what industry it is. But anyway, let's continue. This was over half my participants. An even more disturbing finding was that these requests were more prominent in participants who worked in nonprofit environments compared to those for profits. According to one female nonprofit change leader, she felt that she had somehow become involved with dirty people because there were multiple requests for her to take illegal or unethical actions. Another male for-profit change leader was adamant that he would not take the actions requested of him by his manager, saying, "I'm not going to do it. I simply won't. It goes everything I believe in." His manager's response was simply, "You have to." What do you do when your boss asks or even demands that you take actions that you believe are unethical or know to be illegal? Sadly, this appears to be a growing challenge for the modern worker. I think that's true. I think it's gotten a lot harder. Some reasons for unethical requests: organizations are beginning to demand a higher level of ethics in their employees' conduct. And that is, I think that's where it's coming from. It's because you're asking for such a high bar, you're causing yourselves to trip over the bar. Despite demanding that all employees read and sign the organization's corporate ethics and compliance policy, the projected moral and legal commitments may not materialize. And so we'll talk about it a little bit later. The idea is that they're using these corporate ethics and compliance policies to basically hold a noose over your head and have an opportunity to fire you if you bungle something. The sad reality is that corporate ethics have been under increasing scrutiny as a result of hyper-competitive marketplace. When the competition is significant, company leaders may resort to making business decisions that require employees to take actions that may not be necessarily illegal, but could be perceived as unethical. While some of these decisions have led to public scandal and disgrace, such as Enron, I don't think that's a good analogy, but anyway, it appears that far too many companies are flying under the radar of conventional ethics, yet still achieving success. For example, companies may use misleading product information or unfair competition practices in order to gain market share. Corporate financial reports may be manipulated to cast a better light on their financials. Let me tell you what's going on in the real estate industry. A couple things. One, organizations that are not very good are getting massive amounts of Wall Street money to stay in business long enough to eliminate the competition. That is, to produce a service where the profit is negative and just stay in the business long enough to take out all the competitors so that they can at some point be positive. That's what's going on in real estate right now, in real estate brokerages. Look it up. If you disagree with me, please feel free to put it in the comment section. Right now, I don't have anyone in my comment section, so we're going to continue. And any of all these unethical decisions are made by employees. Today's uber competitive marketplace, some managers believe that a strong commitment to ethical behavior unfairly limits their ability to create desired organizational results. So they rationalize the underlying ethos of their decision and demand that their subordinates do the same. In other words, organizational demands can create a powerful environment in which ethical people behave unethically. That's absolutely true. And that's why I'm trying to do this podcast. I'll say it again because I guess I'm tired, but that's why I'm trying to do the live stream is look, for whatever reason, we're being forced to operate in boxes that are not our boxes. You're forcing ethical people to act unethically. You're forcing people that you're forcing people to jump the corporate ladder by doing things that are not great as just human beings, and you're being rewarded for it. People are failing up because they have certain unethical organizations. They have some certain unethical positions that those in management find attractive. It's really bizarre. But anyway, in a recent article in the Harvard Business Review, it noted that although there had been progress in building more ethical enterprises, 41% of surveyed workers reported seeing ethical misconduct in their workplaces within the previous 12 months. Well, it's like he who lives in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I mean, I hate to use that, but it's bad. The ways in which unethical behaviors are displayed in the workplace vary. In my research, participants characterized their managers' behaviors as unethical when there was a constant swearing, inappropriate comments, yelling, screaming, and even harassment. Such poor communication was a precursor to burnout 64% of the cases. The lack of values-based ethical management practices lead to treatment of employees that border on being inhumane. So, put another way, burnt-out employees were often the victims of unethical bullying by managers. Now, let me just say this. I used to have one of those phones on my desk, and things wouldn't go right sometimes, and the phone would take it. I'm sorry, but the phone took it. I didn't care if I broke the receiver. I didn't care if I broke the phone. I didn't care if I threw it across the room. Now, that was just me dealing with a problem. Does that make me a bad person? Well, and maybe I'm bullying people, but it's not intentional. I'm beating on the phone so I don't beat on someone else. I mean, that's why the phone's there. Anyway, bullying is defined as any unwanted behavior that makes someone feel intimidated, degraded, humiliated, or offended. Well, good luck with that. That is the entire workforce. Bullying, harassment, or similar unethical workplace behaviors, which may or may not be readily apparent in the workplace. Now, look, this bullying thing, we're going to go on with that. And I just want you to understand that the definition of bullying has changed. When I was a kid, there was a kid that got bullied all the time. And what that meant was you would go and you would pick on him. You'd pick at him all the time. And it would come from everywhere. Like every person was picking on this one person. Now bullying is like, if you even say like, your shoes kind of look terrible today, I suspect that's bullying. You're not allowed to say someone's shoes look like terrible. It's really just different. Even though they are similar, harassment under U.S. law has special meaning protections that are not afforded to bullying. That's true. According to research conducted by the Workplace Bullying Institute, which is a worthless organization that could go away, most bullying is not accompanied by illegal harassment, meaning that 80% of bullying provides no legal recourse for its victims. Although there are currently no laws against bullying in the United States, as I hope there never are, it is gratifying that 30 states and 2 territories have introduced anti-bullying legislation in the Healthy Workplace Bill. I don't even know what to make of this. The importance of the anti-bullying law is reinforced due to the rise in such behavior across organizational hierarchies. In 2018, Forbes magazine reported that nearly 75% have been affected by workplace bullying. Whether the bullying is initiated by a supervisor or a coworker, it is always considered to be a type of power struggle between the parties. If you don't know that working in an organization is all about power structure, you're an idiot. It's not bullying. It's just you really should figure out some other line of work where there is no hierarchical power structure, where I don't really know where that ever is going to be. Although the participants in my research did not specifically cite bullying as a cause of their burnout, bullies tend to be poor leaders and withhold resources. The combination of poor leadership and a lack of necessary organizational resources to do the job was cited by 92% of my participants. Additionally, the lack of organizational caring, which are often displayed in the tactics used by bullying managers, contribute to burnout at 85.7% overall. Now, my own thing is this. I don't even know how to put it. I kind of lost it. Poor leadership and lack of necessary organizational resources to the job. Okay. lack of organizational caring, which are often displayed in the tactics used by bullying managers, contribute to burnout in 85% in the total. If you've got a bad manager, I don't know if that's being unethical. You hired somebody and it's not working out. Also, does bullying always have to be by a supervisor or a coworker? Could it be from someone below you? So not your peer, but someone that's in the organizational chart below you is bullying you. How does that work? Anyway, whether these managerial requests are the result of a culture that tolerates such behavior. By the way, I was like, where did I put my plate? I had lunch down here, or dinner. Whether or not these managerial requests are the result of a culture that tolerates such behavior or reflect a management personality that uses power or bullying to pressure workers to behave unethically, the individual must still deal with the effects of these requests. That's right. And that's kind of the problem. There's no good way to deal with this. It says a recent New York Times article gave the benefit of the doubt to the manager. Perhaps your boss made the unethical request unwittingly. Similarly, a BusinessInsider.com article warned of the importance of making sure that you fully understand the situation surrounding your boss's unethical request. However, once such a request has been made, the quandary for many workers lies in the potential ramifications of complying. And let me just put it out there as this as well. Sometimes you're in a bad situation and there are no good answers. And the one you choose might be different than that of your employee. But you're doing the best for the organization. You're trying to take in all the information that you can possibly have and make a good decision for the organization. That may conflict with your ideas as the employee. So I just wanted to put that in there. It says, here's the ramifications. Will you be held complicit and liable if an unethical request is discovered? Will you face retaliation if you report the unethical request to your boss's boss or HR? If you comply, will subsequent requests require even greater ethical challenge? And finally, can you continue to work in an environment in which you must act in a way that undermines your ethics and values, even if you are dependent on your paycheck? And that's the last question. That's the issue that I have is, look, not many people in this day and age can just give up their job of 20 years because someone was unethical. And you're not even harmed by the fact that the person was unethical. I mean, it's tough. These fears of potential retaliation, demotion, or job loss may be justified. In a national business ethics survey conducted by the Ethics and Compliance Initiative in 2016, 53% of U.S. workers who reported misconduct were retaliated against. And I would retaliate against somebody that was undermining my authority in my own organization. Like as the founder and managing broker of Deerwood Realty, if I had 5 employees and one of them was constantly going behind my back and undermining me in everything we did, I would fire them. And I would also point out to the rest of the employees that if they pulled the same garbage that the person I just fired did, they would be gone too. Now, if that's bullying, I don't know. I mean, that's just obvious to me. So, and then by the way, if the person that was going behind my back and undermining me came to me with complaints about the company, I would tell them to go pound sand and leave because I don't have time for this. It's hard enough to make it. And you're not helping. Does that make me a bad person? I don't know. I said it out loud. So what can you do when your boss asks you to act in a way that you believe is unethical? 1, ask questions. 2, trust your gut. 3, focus on creating a more ethical approach to solve the problem. I don't like that one. We talked about that earlier. And then don't tolerate being bullied into something unethical. And then it says some reasons for illegal requests. It says, quite frankly, there are none. Managers who knowingly or unwittingly ask their subordinates to engage in activities that are illegal will still be held liable for the consequences, as you will be too since you complied with the illegal request. Well, they still have to catch you. The challenge is how to protect yourself in the event of a lawsuit stemming from these illegal actions. And it goes on. But here's the end. To protect yourself says, escalate your concern, which is a bad idea. Be prepared that your boss may retaliate against you, which you know, it's true. And look, it says, no, it isn't right. No, it isn't ethical. And yes, it may be illegal, but sadly, retaliation is all too common. Don't be stupid. Do you understand what I'm saying? Don't, like, if you know, like, that you're going somewhere, this could cause problems for you. Don't go into it blindly or being naive. Be prepared that your employer may do nothing in response to your questions or complaints. That's right. This is a cultural issue, and an organizational culture that supports unethical or illegal behaviors will do little to assist an employee who refuses to comply. Be prepared to address coworkers' comments. Right. Maybe your other coworkers are like, why are you screwing this up for me? Although you should ideally keep the confidentiality of your boss's request to engage in legal contact, the office grapevine can still find out, which is a source of power, which is why bullying is part of it, it's not a good situation. Once again, this is a cultural issue. You might be viewed as either a hero or for refusing to act illegally, or you might be viewed as a snitch who doesn't fit with the corporate culture. Make sure your resume is ready in case you find a new job. As previously mentioned, many employees are retaliated against when they fail to comply with the manager's request, even if it's unethical or illegal. The question is, do you want to stay in a culture that advocates unethical or illegal behavior? And are you prepared for the legal consequences of being complicit? I am not. I want out. I think if you work for someone else, you should always have your resume in hand, ready to go, ready to mail. You should be updating that thing every 6 months. Don't care how long you've been in an organization. And that's just my experience with the world as it is today. Now, I have a couple more things, almost done. Just wanted to hit a few points on the way out. Number one, this is questions that I came up with. What happens when you work for the military industrial complex? When you're designing weapons to kill? Better kill them than you and collect a fat check? Is that how you justify it? I don't think I could work for the military industrial complex. I don't care if I'm a brilliant scientist. I don't want to kill people. And you say, well, other people are going to kill you if you don't respond. Yes. It's the same reason why I don't carry a gun. I think people should be allowed to carry guns. I have no problem with that. I just don't personally want to carry a gun because I don't want to be forced to use it. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's a core belief that I have. It makes it. I'll tell you what. If you have ethics, and I'm not saying I have great ethics, okay, but if you have any, it's very hard to work these days, and because most of these companies are built on lies, absolute lies. I do think not knowing is an excuse. For instance, like sometimes there'll be these companies that call me and they offer social media services, and it'll be a young fellow. He's probably in his 20s, and this is his first job, and he's calling me, telling me how his social media company will, the one he works for, will post things on my Facebook page, and the engagement will be so high, I will attract followers, and everyone will be happy, and it'll be wonderful. When I know from experience that won't work, and it will cost me money and not do what it was supposed to do. He doesn't know that he's not being ethical. He doesn't know that the product is terrible. He's just trying to get by. So that's kind of one of those things. Now, the second one is, are companies using their own ethics statements to use as a weapon to fire their own employees who they want to remove anyway, and ethics violations are just the best way to get it done? And we go back to what my friend said. He said, whose ethics when we're talking about ethics? It seems like this is a way to frame people. The situation that I'm very upset about that caused this particular episode is one in which the organization itself bills themselves as being very, 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 very ethical. But what they're doing to their own employees is very, very unethical. Anyway, next one. Are doctors beacons of ethics, politicians, lawyers, real estate agents? How does ethics factor into these professions? Have you ever questioned the ethics of your doctor? Should you? Do we think that politicians are ever ethical? I mean, we see them go through the ethics process time and time again, and they say they're always being ethical, and it's just an absolute joke. Lawyers? Are lawyers always ethical? They're supposed to act in ethical ways, but do they? And then real estate agents, I mean, I can't tell you how many different classes we take on ethics. But it's amazing how things still kind of sometimes turn out in a way that doesn't seem like that was the ethical thing to do. As in what I just explained to you earlier in the your home sold guaranteed. It doesn't make any sense. And then our service-based businesses like cutting the grass, hairstylists, better with regard to doing a new job that doesn't violate your ethics. So what if my child came to me and said, you know what? I don't want to be pushed into a position where I'm not being ethical. And then I would say, hey, are there jobs that are better suited for being ethical? And do they tend to be jobs like the one that I'm trying to have with my own business, and where I work one-on-one with my buyers and sellers? That to me keeps the job real. Similarly, if you cut someone's hair, I mean, are you being ethical? Now, there's a business model with haircutting that's all about upselling product while the person's sitting in the chair. Is that ethical? I don't know. But anyway, it is what it is. And then finally, what do you do when an organization hides itself in strong ethical considerations, and then literally those policies could get you killed? You have the option of leaving, but you may never advance in your career. If it's potential life or death, you have to go, don't you? You have to leave the company that you're working for if what is going on might kill you. And that's just it. What if what they're asking you to do might kill you? What should you do then? I think you should leave. I don't see the point of going to the hierarchy of the business. They've already made their decision. They're not going to change it because of you. Get out. Leave. You will suffer consequences. Hold your head up high. That's what I have for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Went a little longer than I thought it would, but it was a good episode. I'll make all the changes. I'm exhausted. I'm going to make all the changes in the morning. Thank you for watching. I'm going to catch you tomorrow, probably the same time, 9:00 Standard Time, or Central Time. I'm sorry, and we'll come up with more things to discuss. Thank you again, and good night.